Alright guys, I am back again with another deck profile for Cardfight Vanguard Dear Days on Nintendo Switch. This time we got version 1 of my Keter Sanctuary Griphogila Dragontree deck. So version 1, everything through the additional special set. So through a fraction of D-Booster Set 11, also the final DLC for this game. And this is the second of 5 different builds for Griphogila that I have made. One for each of the main nations. And just like the Dragon Empire build that I went through before, this deck has basically the same strategy, focused on your grade 10 Griphogila Vanguard, where you basically just stall out the game until turn 6, when you can get a guaranteed over trigger and hit your opponent really hard with a massive amount of offense. So as always, we'll be going through the deck, and then we'll show it off in one card fight. So starting first with the ride deck, we of course have the unique ride deck for Griphogila that consists of 5 cards as opposed to the usual 4. So first off, our grade 0 starter is of course Griphoseed. So it has its continuous ability that says this unit gets power plus 2,000 for each Calamity card with a different card name in your soul. And also has its auto ability that says at the beginning of your main phase, you choose a Calamity card from your ride deck and put it into Soul. Then you can put 3 Calamity cards from Soul that were in the ride deck back into the ride deck face up. To search your hand or deck for up to 1 Dragontree of Ecliptic Decimation Griphogila, write it as stand, and if you searched your deck, shuffle your deck. And then if you wrote a card, you choose 2 of your rearguard circles and put a Dragontree marker on each of them. So I don't want to repeat the whole Dragontree spiel 5 times, so I'm going to assume you have a basic understanding of how the whole Griphogila gimmick works. If you don't, you can refer to my Dragon Empire Griphogila video, and I go into it in more depth there. But of course, the quick version is basically you just sit on this card until turn 3, and then you send your 3 Calamity cards that were in your ride deck back to the ride deck to Superior Ride into your grade 10 Griphogila. And you also get to put 2 Dragontree markers on your rearguard circles, which I throw up a screenshot of the Dragontree markers. They have an ability where during your turn, any unit on that circle just gets an extra 5k if your Vanguard has Dragontree or Masks in its card name. So you want to build up as many of those Dragontree markers as possible, since they help the overall strategy of the deck. And of course, this starter ability is the only way to initially ride into the grade 10 Griphogila, since obviously there are no grades 5 through 9. So obviously a vital card for the deck to be able to function. So next up, we have our 3 normal order Calamity cards. So first for the grade 1, we have Beginning of the End, which all 3 of these Calamity orders have the same ability that you never use anyway because you just move them back and forth between your ride deck and soul and then you remove them. So I'm not even going through that ability, it never gets used anyway. But yeah, that's the grade 1. The grade 2 Calamity is Ill-Omened Transmogrification. And then the grade 3 Calamity is Coming of Demise. So then the last card in our ride deck is of course our over trigger. So we have Light Dragon Deity of Honors, Amartanoa. So his additional effect says until end of turn, you also perform drive checks for the battles your rearguards attack. So again, since this is in the ride deck and not the main deck, you don't have a chance of lucking into it like normal, but instead you have a guaranteed chance of being able to activate both its trigger effect and additional effect on turn 6, thanks to Griphogila's ability. So that is the ride deck. Moving on to the main deck, we are starting first with the 1 grade 10 in the deck, 4 copies of Dragontree of Ecliptic Decimation Griphogila. So the actual proper Vanguard for this deck. And of course I have 1 copy of the regular triple rare version and then 3 copies of the double frame rare version, just for aesthetic purposes. But anyway, he's got his continuous ability that says during your turn, this unit gets power plus 5,000 for each Dragontree marker on your rearguard circles. And if you have 3 or more Dragontree markers, this unit gets critical +1. So you get 2 of the 3 from Grifoseed's ability, and then you gotta use some of the other cards in the deck to generate any more. But he gains 5k for each one you can get onto your board, and he gains a crit as long as you've got at least 3. So your Vanguard should be swinging for some pretty big numbers with some crit pressure every turn. So potentially you can actually possibly take out your opponent before you make it to turn 6 and do your big play, if you can hit them hard enough with your columns. But anyway, he also has his auto ability, which is his main ability, that says once per turn. When this unit attacks a Vanguard, you choose a face-up Calamity card from your ride deck and remove it. And if you did not remove a card, you choose a Overtrigger from your ride deck, reveal it, activate all of its trigger effects and additional effects, remove it, and stand all of your rearguards on rearguard circles with a Dragontree marker. So when you attack with him on turns 3 through 5, you'll remove one of the calamities that you sent back to your ride deck, and then on turn 6, when you don't have any more calamities to remove, you instead get to activate the Overtrigger directly from your ride deck. So you'll get the 100 million power, and you'll get a Martinoa's additional effect, letting all of your rearguards do drive checks during their battles that turn. And also you get to restand all your rearguards on Dragontree markers. So your front row should always have them thanks to Grifoseed's ability. So that should guarantee you at least 5 attacks on that turn. Potentially more if you have a certain rearguard out that we'll go over here in a second. But you should be guaranteed the 5 attacks, and potentially up to 6 drive checks that turn if you have 2 grade 3s in your front row. Maybe less if you have grade 2s. But even then you should get at least 4 drive checks. So 4 to 6 trigger chances and 5 and possibly more attacks during that big turn. And of course the 100 million power stacked on top of that as well. Plus your Vanguard should be at big numbers and 2 crits by then as well too. So definitely a devastating turn if you can make it there. Of course the deck is very slow overall since you have to stall until turn 6 to get that. So you do have to be very careful about controlling the pace of the fight and controlling your opponent's offensive output in order to survive long enough to actually use this ability. But if you get it off, it should pretty much guarantee a win on that turn, because by that point in the game your opponent's probably not going to be able to block all that. If somehow they do survive it though, on every turn after that, you won't have your Overtrigger to activate anymore since it gets removed. But you will still be able to restand all your rearguards on Dragontree markers. So you still will be getting the 5 attacks every turn after that as well. If it should go that long, which again it shouldn't. So definitely a pretty cool Vanguard for the deck. So that's obviously the only grade 10 in the deck, so moving on to the grade 3s. First off, we have 3 copies of Divine Sister Lepisto. So she has an auto ability that says when your drive check reveals a trigger unit, you can counterblast 2 to stand this unit, and it gets power plus 5,000 until end of turn. So this is the card I mentioned that can give you potentially more than 5 attacks on your big turn 6. She can also give you potentially 4 attacks on the turns prior to that. Now she is a counterblast 2, so that is kind of a steep cost. And there also is that RNG factor of being able to use her at all, since you do have to check into a trigger. And we don't have really any ways to manipulate the triggers in this deck. So it's a luck chance of whether she'll be able to be used at all. And then if you can use her, she does eat a lot of resources. But she gives you that extra attack. She also powers herself up. Now, we also have a lot of cards in this deck dedicated to resource recovery. So you actually can potentially use this counterblast cost more than you would expect. And if you have her out on your big turn 6, you'll have more chances of her ability going off as well. Since if you have her and another grade 3 in your front row, that'll be 4 drive checks to potentially find a trigger to be able to restand her on that turn as well. Which if you gave her the 100 million power from a Martinoa, that could potentially mean 200 million plus attacks on that turn. And possibly 6 attacks in total, maybe even a 7th if things line up right and you check triggers at the right time and have enough resource recovery to keep using that skill. But that is a stretch at that point. But yeah, overall she is still one of the main offensive cards for the deck. I definitely like having her in my front row on my big over trigger turn, just to add that extra pressure. So next we have 3 copies of Knight of War Damage Fosado. So he has his continuous ability that says this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. So a pretty nice protection ability that can stop him from any of your opponent's cards that choose a target. So anything that'll choose him to retire or bind or whatever, he will be immune to that. And then he's also got his auto ability that says when this unit's attack hits, you countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. So this is one of the resource recovery cards in this deck. Now he does have to hit, so again it is a little iffy whether he'll get this skill to go off or not. However, he doesn't have to hit a Vanguard, he can hit anything. And this deck wants to attack into rear guards a lot anyway, just to, you know, help control the pace and hurt your opponent's offense. So if you want to have him attack into a rear guard, they'll be less likely to block it, and you'll have more chances of getting those extra resources out of it. So you can, again, actually get this to potentially go off more than you would expect that you could. So yeah, a pretty useful card in this deck. So that's all the grade 3s, moving on to the grade 2s. First off, we have 4 copies of Magic of Alteration Turnar. So she has an auto ability that says at the end of the battle this unit attacked while boosted. If your damage zone has 3 or more face down cards, you put this unit into soul and countercharge 1. So this is yet another resource card for this deck, giving you both an extra soul and an extra countercharge, which this one doesn't have to rely on hitting, but you do have to have 3 face down damage already in your damage zone in order to activate that. So you will need to use some of your other counterblast costs in order to be able to use her. But she does give you those 2 resources, and she is a -1 since you do have to put her into your soul and you don't draw any to replace her. However, she does combo very nicely with the Dragontree Wretch in this deck, which we'll go over when we get to the grade 1s. But the Dragontree Wretch has an ability that activates when you call something in the same column as him. So you could call Turnar in front of him, and then he can boost Turnar to get her ability active. And then you can put Turnar into your soul, and that'll open up that rearguard circle for you to potentially call something in front of him again the next turn, and use his skill again. So clearing herself from the board can actually combo well with your other cards. Plus it gives you that extra soul resource, which can be sparse in this deck, since due to the way the ride deck works, you actually end up with only 1 card in your soul on turn 3. So getting that extra soul for some of your other costs can be nice as well. So next we got 3 copies of Knight of Piercing Cadwalla. So his auto ability says at the end of the battle this unit attacked a Vanguard. If you have 4 or more units, you can Soul Blast 1 and retire this unit. To look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 grade 2 or greater unit card from among them, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. And if you did not reveal a card, draw a card. So this ability is a 1-for-1 since you have to retire him in order to pay the cost, and then you either get to grab a grade 2 or greater out of the top 3, or if you don't find anything in the top 3 that you can grab or want to grab, you can just shuffle and draw instead. So he doesn't generate any card advantage for you, but he can help you find some of your combo pieces potentially. And again, if you call him in front of your Dragontree Wretch, he can clear himself off the board to potentially reuse the Wretch's skill the next turn as well. So that's another card that can combo very nicely with that grade 1. So that is all the grade 2s. Moving on to the grade 1s. First off, we have 4 copies of Dragontree Wretch Solda Sakab. So he has 2 auto abilities. First one says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, you can counterblast 1 to choose one of your rearguard circles without any Dragontree markers and put a Dragontree marker. So this card is the primary way to generate your extra markers after the 2 you get from Griffo Seed. So he can give you the 3rd and potentially more that you need. to give Griphogila his extra crit. And then he's also got a second auto ability when he's on back row rearguard circle that says once per turn, when your rearguard is placed in the front row of the same column as this unit, you can counterblast one and draw a card. So this card is also the primary draw engine for the deck, letting you draw one every time you call something in front of him. So like I mentioned before, he combos very nicely with Turn R and Cadwalla, since both of them can remove themselves from the field. That opens up that circle for you to call something else the next turn and use the skill again. And in Turn R's case at least, she also can potentially countercharge when she leaves the field. So that'll also help pay for that cost as well. So definitely a counterblast heavy card since both of his abilities do cost counterblasts. But we have quite a bit of countercharging options in this deck. So you should be able to use his second ability multiple times in the game and increase your card advantage as much as possible to help you survive till that big 6th turn. So next we have 3 copies of Divine Sister Fasciata. So her auto ability says once per turn, when your drive check reveals a trigger unit, you can Soul Blast 2 and countercharge 1. So this is yet another countercharge option for this deck. Now again, just like with Lepisto, it is random chance since you have to check into a trigger in order to activate it. You also have to have 2 soul in order to use it. And like I said, the ride deck only gives you 1 soul by the end of it. So you will have to rely on either Turn R skill or Fosato skill in order to get those extra souls. Or Persona riding, of course. But besides Cadwalla, this is the only other card that actually uses soul in this deck. So you can build up those soul resources to turn them into more countercharging, which is very nice with Soda Sakab using so many counterblasts, and potentially Lepisto as well if you can get her skill off a few times. So 3 different countercharging options might sound a little excessive in this deck, but really it's not when you want to loop as many of those abilities as possible. So the only other grade 1 we have is our Sentinel, so we have 4 copies of Palladium Zeal Dragon. Just your standard perfect guard. And of course can't use Sanctitude in this deck since your Vanguard is grade 10. So that is all of the grade 1s, moving on to the grade 0s. First off we have our trigger lineup, which I am just running rainbow triggers, so we got 4 crit, 3 front, 4 draw, and 4 heal. So starting first with the crit triggers, we have 4 copies of Blade Feather Dragon. Crit with a skill, then the battle boosted you can put into your soul to give one of your units plus 2k until end of turn. It can be another way to get soul, but I don't really use that ability much because you don't want to be giving up 15k shields in this deck, since you need as much defense as possible. So next for the fronts, we have 3 copies of Bard of Heavenly Song, Alpak. So front with a skill, if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, get shield plus 5,000. So your 20k shield, front trigger. Next for the draws, we have 4 copies of Protection Magic Prorobi. So draw with a skill, if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, shield plus 5,000. So your 10k shield, draw trigger. And then for the heals, we have 4 copies of Recuperate Angel, just the vanilla heal. Of course, if you want to run any of the effect heals, you can. And then our last grade 0 is just 2 copies of the Calamity Blitz Order, Corrosive Smoke Signals. So there's no cost to play it, and you can play it if you have a Hydrogrom Vanguard, which Hydrogrom is the race of all the Dragontree related cards. And this lets you choose one of your rearguard circles without any Dragontree markers, put a Dragontree marker, then choose one of your units being attacked, and it gets power plus 10,000 until end of that battle. And if you have a Vanguard with Griphogila in its card name, it gets power plus 20,000 instead of plus 10,000. So being a grade 0 card, you actually can play this prior to turn 3 before you ride into Griphogila. So if you play it while you're still on Griffo Seed, it'll just be a 10k shield. Or if you play it after you've ridden into your grade 10, then it'll be a 20k shield. But either way, you do get an extra Dragontree marker onto one of your circles that doesn't already have one. Which this card is actually the only way to stack Dragontree markers on the same circle in this deck. Since if you play this before you ride into Griphogila, the 2 markers you get from Grifoseed don't have to go on a circle without a marker on them. And that's the only marker generating ability in this deck that doesn't specify that. So if you play this prior to turn 3 and then use Grifoseed's skill, you can put one of the markers from Grifoseed on the same circle that you put the marker from this card. In which case the power gain from those markers will stack. So yeah, that is the only way to do that in this deck, if that's something you're interested in doing. So that is the deck. So we will go ahead and have our one fight with it. And I think I'm going to fight Toya this time. And we will be going first. Alright, so we want to end the phase without riding. And instead use Grifoseed's skill to put Beginning of the End into our soul. To give him an extra 2k. And we'll just end our turn. And I'll let this one through. Alright, so once again, we do not want to ride. And instead use Grifoseed to put Ill Omen Transmogrification into Soul. Bring him up to 10k. And then we can't do anything but call triggers, which we don't want to do, so we'll just attack. And he'll superior call his crit trigger from the top of his deck. So I am going to let that one through. And we get a draw trigger. So one last time, we do not want to ride. And instead use Grifoseed to automatically put Coming of Demise to our soul. And then we can send all 3 calamities from soul back to ride deck to superior ride, the triple rare version of Griphogila. And we'll get to place 2 Dragontree markers, so we'll put them on the front row. And let's see, I do not have much in my hand, so I'm going to call Solda Sakab and put him in the front row, actually. And then we'll use his skill to Counter Blast and place 1 more Dragontree marker, which will give Griphogila an extra 5k and an extra crit. So then I think I'm just going to go ahead and attack with Griphogila first. And his skill will let us remove Beginning of the End from our ride deck. And he let that through, and we got a crit trigger. So crit to the Vanguard, power to Solda Sakab. So that's a 3 crit attack that's going to hit. So I put him immediately to 4. With a really awesome on-hit animation. And he got no triggers out of that. So then we can attack with Soda Sakab. And he guards. And he reveals 3 Aldens from his hand to draw. And he uses Alden's skill to call 1 and draw 2. So we just need 5 to block that, so I'll guard it with one of these wretches. And we'll guard that with that crit. He gets a front trigger. And a grade 3, so he will get to restand, but that attack won't go through. And he did not use Spirar skill to draw. So let's see, we'll use our Blitz order to block that one. And that'll give us one more Dragontree marker, which we'll put here. And give Griphogila 20 key. And I'll let that one through. Alright, so now we will Persona Ride. So we will go ahead and move Soda Sakab back. And we will call Cadwalla. And use Soda Sakab's second ability to counterblast and draw. So then we'll call Turnar over there. And I think that's all for now. So we'll go ahead and attack with Griphogila first. 43,002 crit. And his skill will let us remove Ill Omen Transmogrification. And he perfect guards. And then we'll have Turnar attack into Alden. And we'll have Cadwalla attack the Vanguard so we can use his skill. Unless that went through. And he gets a heal trigger, which he does get. But we can use Cadwalla's skill to Soul Blast and retire him. And we'll check the top 3. And we find another Persona Ride copy, so I'll go ahead and grab that to hand. As he rides into Bastion Prime. cause another Alden. So again, we just need 5, so we'll block that with... let's see, we'll block it with that Dragontree wretch. And we'll block that one with that crit. And we'll guard that one with that heal, which that'll be 2 to pass. He gets a crit trigger. And a perfect guard. So we'll get to re-stand his 2 rear guards. And now he uses Spur skill to draw. And that is huge and 2 crit, so I think I'm going to go ahead and perfect guard it. And we will discard one of those draws. And we'll guard that with that crit. Alright, so I could Persona Ride here, but I think I'm actually going to try to save that for my over trigger turn. So we'll not ride. And instead, I'm going to call Cadwalla and use Soda Sakab skill again to Counter Blast and draw. So I will go ahead and attack with Griphogila first. And his skill will let us remove Coming of Demise, our last calamity, from our ride deck. And he put some extra on that to make sure that doesn't go through. So then I'm going to have Turnar attack Alden. And then we'll have Cadwalla attack Sparar, I believe. Weaken his board as much as possible, which he fills right back up. So let's see, we need 5, so I'm going to intercept with Cadwalla. And then we'll guard that with that crit. And I think I'll let that one through. Gets a draw trigger. A perfect guard. And his grade 3, so he does get his restand. So that is a whopping 50,000, but it's only one crit, so I'm gonna let it through. And let's see, I will guard with that draw and then intercept. So now we can Persona Ride. So let's see, I am going to call Lepisto over here. And I am not going to use Soul to Sakab's ability because I'm actually close to decking out. And we'll call Fosado, as well as our other Soul to Sakab behind him. And I'm not going to use his marker ability either. And I think we're all set up, so we will attack with Lepisto first. And that's the one through. And it gets a front trigger. So then we'll attack with Fosado. So then we can attack with Griphogila for 43,002 crit. And since we have no more calamities left in our ride deck, we get to activate our over trigger. So we get to draw, and we can give 100 million power to Lepisto. And all our rear guards on Dragontree markers get to restand. And we get a front trigger. And that triggers Lepisto's skill, but she's already standing, so we're not going to use that. And if we can get another trigger, and we didn't. If we got one more, that would have went through. But now we can attack with Lepisto for 100,051,000. And the perfect guards. And we got nothing off that twin drive that we got from a Martinoa skill. But we can still attack with Fosado for 51,000 plus twin drive. And it guards with his over trigger. And we got no triggers on that either, so we don't get to restand Lepisto. And he actually survived our over trigger turn. Wow. His hand was so huge, he managed to survive all of that. So, let's see, we'll guard that with turn R. God. And we'll guard that with the heal. God. And we'll guard that one with our Blitz Order, actually. So that'll give us one more Dragontree marker onto our last rearguard circle. And 20k shield. And he does get his restand. And he got no triggers off of that. But he gets 2 more rearguard attacks. So we should have no problem blocking that, considering we've got 3 perfect guards in our hand. One of which I'm going to use right now. And we'll discard Lapisto. And we can guard that with our front trigger. Alright, so now I'm going to declare final turn. Because surely he won't be able to survive again, so we will Persona Ride. And we'll call Fasciata to back row center. And now we'll go ahead and attack with Fosato first.
Vanguard attack.
And he perfect guards again. And then we'll attack with Lapisto for 41,000. And he's got to let it through. And we finally got him with that one. So there you go. That was my Keter Sanctuary Griphogila Dragontree deck. A rare instance of the over-trigger turn not putting them away, but we still managed to win in the end. So anyway, I will be back soon with more deck profiles. Next up, I'll be doing my Stoicheia variant of Griphogila. So until then, I guess that's all for this video. So lots of luck to you and yours.